Routine is one of the most interesting cases of development hell I've seen in any game. 13 years, the entire game is scrapped after 8, and changes engines 3 times with multiple revisions in scope. There's no way game survives all that and comes out good, right? And maybe that's why I was drawn to it, because I'm not a horror game person. I have no fear with the shovel. At least single player wise. I don't know what it is, because I can watch horror movies and let's plays just fine. I think it's the level of immersion that comes from being an active participant in the story itself that gets to me. Despite that, I am a sucker for great art direction, so when Routine was re-revealed in 2022 and featured a captivating sci-fi retro future aesthetic filled with analog technology, terrifying androids, and sound design by Mick fucking Gordon, even I couldn't help but get excited. And yes, I said re-revealed because this game, it turns out, has a pretty storied history. The year is 2012 and the game spearheading the indie survival horror genre are Amnesia and Slender. So when Routine was revealed that year at Gamescom, it was actually pretty unique for its time. It touted procedurally generated levels, permadeath, and multiple endings all packaged in a unique sci-fi setting. Suffice to say, people were excited for a new take on the genre. So much so that it was in the first ever batch of indie games to be greenlit through Steam Greenlight, the way indie games used to make it on Steam through voting. From then on, updates from developers Lunar Software were sparse but encouraging as development appeared to progress until 2016, when a March 2017 release date would be finally announced. But as March came and went, so did Lunar Software. Lunar Software would later cite trouble meeting expectations, financial problems, and health issues as the reasons for ceasing development. Perhaps the game was too ambitious for the self-funded studio comprised of only 3 people. That is, until 2020, when the game would be saved by publisher Raw Fury, which would allow Lunar Software to restart development from scratch in a new engine and eventually re-reveal the game at 2022's Summer Games Fest. It's met with cautious optimism from now 10 years of built-up expectations. What was previously uncharted territory is now a crowded market, with Routine now standing in the shadow of games like Alien Isolation and Soma. People have a much higher quality bar than they did 13 years ago. So does Routine stand toe-to-toe with the games it technically grandfathered? Well, compared to what was promised 13 years ago, a lot has changed. First of all, the art direction has improved tenfold. I believe Routine is a masterclass in atmosphere, with highly detailed liminal spaces transporting you to an alternate high-tech 1999, bathed in stylized vintage color grading, and dare I say, a good implementation of film grain. It really immerses you in the era. What really brings it all together, though, is the phenomenal soundscape. And while it's hard to tell exactly what parts were touched by Mick Gordon himself, having left the project in 2024, you can definitely feel his influence throughout the game. The eerie hums and groans of a dilapidated lunar base, coupled with the weighty footsteps of patrolling androids, instill a constant paranoia that doesn't let up the entire playthrough. Genuinely, I think this game is worth playing through just to experience the terrifying atmosphere alone. It's nothing like what I've experienced in a game. Also, bonus points for being well optimized. The gameplay is where we see another departure from the original vision. What was initially intended to be an almost roguelite experience aimed to offer unique run-based gameplay where death would start you from the beginning, is now a more traditional fixed to linear story with chapters and checkpoints. That being said, how does the game actually play? Firstly, I want to commend Lunar Software for trusting the player's intelligence and providing zero handholds, waypoints, maps, or even a HUD. All you get are clues provided through environmental storytelling and diegetic UIs. Gameplay-wise, Routine doesn't feel all that disconnected from the era it was conceptualized. It's a familiar first-person stealth survival horror with solid puzzles. Not a bad thing by any means, but you shouldn't expect any innovation in this space. Despite that, the game is incredibly tactile and satisfying to play, in large part thanks to the Cosmonaut Assistance Tool, or CAT.
What the fuck?
An analog multi-tool you acquire early on, which force you to physically interact with the buttons and components of to enable its various functions. Lunar Software intended for the CAT to serve a dual purpose, defense and puzzle solving, but unfortunately in practice it only serves one of those well. The puzzles are well done and introduced in a natural way that fully utilizes the cat's capabilities. The enemy androids, however, or Type 5s, their AI are incredibly basic and so easy to avoid that even though defense is intended as a last resort, you almost never have to do it save for a single scripted sequence.
I didn't. It was a last resort.
Oh my god.
I found a weakness.
You're rage baiting him!
Defense doesn't even feel like a last resort, and even feels encouraged thanks to the very generous ammo economy. Due to this, the android encounters were a little immersion breaking, but thankfully the game brings it back in the second half. But we'll come back to that. The story of Routine is where I've seen the most mixed reactions. The story is mostly told through the environment, characters' logs found in terminals, and their audio recordings. I was mostly captivated by the world of Routine more than I was any of its characters. You're a software engineer sent to fix an issue with the Lunar Resort Union Plaza's security system. After a brief quarantine, you find that the base has been abandoned, and the only ones remaining are the now hostile Type 5s designed to maintain the base. A side note, it's never actually explained why what is supposed to be a resort has terrifying androids roaming about. According to the devs in an AMA, there are former riot control units that were decommissioned and repurposed as a cost-cutting measure by Union Plaza. Such an interesting piece of lore that I never encountered in the game. Anyway, as you explore, you uncover the mystery of what really happened and why the Type 5s went rogue. A pretty basic plot until you reach the second half of the game, which makes a huge tonal shift. You go from generic sci-fi AI gone mad plot to occult, Lovecraftian, organic horror. I've seen the show described as generic, which I kinda agree with, as it's more in line with traditional horror. The marketing of the game also heavily emphasized the Type 5s as the central threat, but they only make up half the game's runtime, so I can see how it can leave people feeling disappointed. But the shift is so well executed that I have to give it a pass. I never shit myself the way I did before reaching that point of the game, and it only gets scarier from there. And the more I ruminate on the story, the more fascinating it gets. It's a controversial aspect of the game, but I can't delve into it without entering spoiler territory. It's a real make or break point for many, and the ending contributes to that sentiment as it's very abstract and left open-ended. If that's a risk you're willing to take, I highly encourage you to do so. So, 13 years later, was Routine worth it? I think it was always impossible for a studio of 3 people to meet 13 years of expectations. That being said, the game as it is, in my opinion, is very much worth it. What Lunar Software have accomplished here is nothing short of impressive. If you can forgive the somewhat dated gameplay and controversial story, you will be repaid in droves by a truly gorgeous and immersive game with world building and atmosphere. I have so much love for this game that it inspired me to write my first ever review. Routine is more art than game, and for that reason, I highly encourage everyone watching to give it a shot. Also, look at this guy. How can you not like this guy?